So we're going to turn to Slido. Please keep the questions coming in. There's a few already that we can go through, actually, which are on here that we can see. The first couple mention work experience, which is great, and it's something that I'm happy to answer. We are finalising an official ITV work experience programme, which will launch in the autumn of this year. We're looking at October for either people to come into ITV to experience what it's like in person in one of our offices up and down the country, or we're looking at virtual placements as well, or a combination of the two. So in terms of work experience, that'll be open to sixth formers, that'll be open to people. We're going to make that accessible for all in the autumn this year. So there will be opportunities there for you to look at. Again, I think it's worth keeping an eye on our careers site and what we do on social media around promoting that as well. So hopefully that answers that for you. Deb, I think, has already mentioned about ATS, difficulties that occur with the job. Question here, is it easy to move around departments? Yes, it potentially is, actually. We're quite proud, actually, at ITV in terms of internal mobility. So if people want to experience different departments to grow, to create a better skill set, then we support that. We wouldn't stifle anyone. As long as it doesn't affect with the day job, we'll absolutely encourage and support everyone's appetite to move into different areas. And we've got a really nice ratio of people moving around the business here at ITV, different departments, to get different skill sets and to just grow professionally and personally as well. Let me just quick check on the questions. Are you offering any production apprenticeships this year?
So main apprenticeships this year are going to be in the areas that Jason mentioned. So we've got a lot around the finance area, we've got a lot in communications as well. So there's a real variety this year, and my best piece of advice, we've got 24 roles that we're looking for. So without running through all of them, it really would be going onto the website and having a look and just seeing what you fancied, and seeing if any of them really do take your interest. There is a wide scope, but hopefully over the next couple of years that will start to grow as well, in terms of what we are able to offer from the apprenticeship perspective.
Thanks, Ash. Next one here is good question. How do you sell yourself in a CV if you have no previous work experience?
So it is tricky as you're building your experience to then to sell yourself, but I think it comes down to your skills. So if you've got any volunteer experience, if you've had any part-time job experience, it doesn't have to be directly related to the role, but there will be transferable skills that you can mention. It could be, you know, teams that you were involved with at school, certificates, as I say, part-time jobs, and you can describe the skills and the things that you've learned from those experiences on your CV.
And I think on top of that as well, just to add in there, Debs, maybe if you've volunteered, if you've done any extracurricular activities, if you did anything in school that was additional, maybe you volunteered to be part of a peer group for the younger years, anything like that is perfect to add to a CV.
Yeah, brilliant. Next question then. So to join this industry, is it more effective to get an apprenticeship or a university degree after sixth form? Personally, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that question.
No, I don't think there is either. I genuinely do believe that it's up to you. It's your choice which route you do choose to go down. Sort of being in the role I'm in, apprenticeships will always be, you know, my first choice. I think you get a really great experience of working in a business, but also the qualification behind it. But likewise, a degree also gives you the technical knowledge as well. So you can get both worlds really. I think it would just be personal preference, which one you wanted to do. And there are degree apprenticeships now as well. So it's something that ITV is starting to look at. There are a couple available at the moment around the legal sector and the finance sector. So those are the areas that we're looking at the moment for degree apprenticeships, which I think answers one of the other questions that's just popped up. But yeah, I think it is just down to personal preference really, and what you're looking to get out of it. The outcome is the same. You still come out with a degree at the end of it, but the apprenticeship does give you the little bit of work experience behind it as well.
Brilliant. And just on that theme, there's another one coming. Do you accept both A levels and T levels? Do you lean towards one?
Absolutely. So both of them are as equivalent to each other. They're both really valuable qualifications. And T levels are something that we are starting to look at from the work placement perspective as well, as we know that there is a placement required on those two years basically. But yeah, anything like that, it's equivalent. So, you know, if you've got GCSEs or the equivalent, A levels or the equivalent, it's things that we will all accept through your applications. And basically we're just making sure you are right and ready for the role. And sort of mirroring what Lee and Deb and Jason said, it's just about preparing for the role you're applying for, doing your research, showing that you're committed and actually you know what you're coming into is going to be key for the apprenticeships.
And just sticking with the apprenticeship theme, which is great because it's being launched soon, so it's a hot topic for us. Ages, so what is the age range for apprenticeships?
So anything from 16 upwards. Now, there are different levels of apprenticeships that we will be offering, and some of those may have certain age categories that we're looking for from an entry criteria. So the higher levels of apprenticeships will look for A levels or equivalent, your level 3s to be sort of accessible to. But then your T levels falls into that as well. And yeah, I think just, what was the question?
Age ranges.
Age ranges. Sorry. So yeah, there's no age range on any of them. Sort of upper age limit, but like I say, just entering, you might have different ones for your entry criteria. And we do have some areas that are looking for 18 plus due to this type of work that you would be doing throughout the apprenticeship.
Fantastic, thank you. And there was one here slightly earlier that I'm going to read out. I haven't missed it. Might have just disappeared actually. It was around in front of camera opportunities, or how you get, what's the best route to get to in front of camera roles. It's a super competitive area because it's obviously quite glamorous. People aspire to work in front of camera. It's not something that I could necessarily do. But it is super competitive, and people often find that they start in a manner of different ways, often as runners, to be honest with you, on shows. For example, we've got a slate of live TV shows every day that run 5 days a week, which amass sort of 7.5 hours. So we need a massive team of people to make that happen, and that's obviously from the morning show, Good Morning Britain, to Lorraine this morning in Loose Women. So by lunchtime, we've got a massive team to help deliver that live on a daily basis. So we need all sorts of people at different levels to help bring that to life. So we find that trying to get into that area in a production related environment, somehow, some of it's down to roles that are offered and apprenticeships, some of it's down to maybe having contacts or seeing if you can go freelance. But again, it's just super competitive, and I would say if you do manage to get in that entry level, that first beginning, it might even be as a runner, you know, so you might then be asked to have a look at getting the on-screen talents, kind of cups of tea and all that sort of thing, and that's where a lot of on-screen talent tend to start, is at that beginning. So it's worth having a look at. The other option is if you're looking to become on-screen in terms of like a journalist to cover sort of news, sport, current affairs, health, or whatever else in terms of news, then we do run a yearly news traineeship for budding journalists, and we start that each year in February, where we go live for people to start in October, and that is a 9-month program paid, where you'll be situated in one of our newsrooms up and down the country to learn the inner workings of the newsroom, including a lot of on-screen work as well. So that's something else to look out for. Just gonna have a look at the next question. Great. Which degrees will be most useful to get into the industry?
Very wide.
Yeah, again, I think maybe there's no right or wrong here again, but I think when you say the industry, I think you need to look at narrowing down the specific area within that industry of interest. So whether it is our commercial department, whether it is legal, whether it is finance, whether it is production related or whatever else, marketing, commissioning, for example. So I think to help with that question, you kind of need to have a focal point of where you want to move into the industry. But again, I don't think there's necessarily a massive right or wrong with that, because we look for people with transferable skills. We look for people with a great deal of motivation and appetite and to do the job as well. So they haven't got a degree per se, then that's not a prerequisite for us to bar them or to discount them, actually. So regardless of what your education background is, or you do or don't go on to get, I don't think you can necessarily say that will rule you out of a career move in a certain direction with ITV, especially because if you can show passion, if you can show willing and appetite and proactiveness, and you pick up some skills along the way, then I think that'll put you in good stead. Apprenticeships again. Are they paid?
Yes, they are. Yes, so we pay the living wage for all our apprenticeships.
This is a great question. This is the one that I thought that come up before and I couldn't find it, but I've now found it, or they've just resent it. Deb, you're smiling because I think you might recognise the question. It is, what's your ideal candidate? We're all going to have different answers to this question.
We are all going to have. I think just to sort of, I suppose, re-summarize what's already been said, our ideal candidate is somebody that, you know, has a really nice, succinct, clear, concise CV and cover letter that follows the process, that's flexible when it comes to interview times, because sometimes we're working with managers that are really busy, and so we've got limited sort of interview space. Somebody who has, as my colleague Lee said, you know, checks the detail of the process, looks at the calendar invitation, jumps on the video link, is well prepared, has researched ITV and the role, and you know we're very lucky because the vast majority of our candidates are a pleasure to work with. And so, yeah, we would love for you to be one of those people. Is there anything I've missed there, Jason, about the ideal candidate?
No, I mean, I suppose just to add to that, is there such a thing as an ideal candidate? Because what I mean by that is when people start out on their careers, we're not looking for the polished, finished article. What we're looking for is kind of potential to be that. So if you can show those words that we mentioned, sort of passion and a real appetite and motivation, plus all the extras that Lee and Deb have mentioned around attention to detail, the right amount of detail, the tone, I think that will absolutely help. Next question, let's have a look. Is it possible to work from home? Actually, yes, because many of us work from home. We operate in a hybrid model, so we work a few days from home, we work a few days in the office. It depends what team you work in, because some teams require to be on site and in the office more than others, depending on the job that they do. But more often than not, ITV, we do offer quite a flexible working arrangement in terms of working in the office versus working at home. I think it's also important to mention that if you are working from home for a considerable amount of time, 2 or 3 days a week, then we will help support you to make sure that you're kind of set up at home effectively, so you've got the right sort of support in terms of desk, chair, and everything else that runs alongside that. I think it's important to mention also, whilst we do move into more of a working from home hybrid versus being at work model, is that there is a big support mechanism in place at ITV for people that especially do work from home, just to make sure that they are set up effectively. They've got everything that they need physically and mentally as well. So there's a lot of work that we do in terms of well-being to make sure that everyone is supported and they can do their job effectively if it's not in the office as well. Next question, let's see what we've got coming up here.
Relocation, financial support for relocation. Unfortunately, it's usually not possible. I don't know whether the rest of the team have got any exceptions to this, but usually it's not possible for us to cover the cost of a relocation to a different part of the country.
It's not an official ITV policy that we would cover relocation. It all depends on the circumstances, really. We would work it through on a case-by-case basis in terms of relocating, but it's not an official policy, that's for sure. Just scanning back through the questions. Whilst you wait for more questions to come through, and please keep them coming as you think of them. Question I was going to ask, not that I want to put anyone on the spot, but I am. I was just going to say, Days, your experience of applying for your apprenticeship, how long did you have to kind of dedicate to doing the application? Because I know that often a lot of people, me included, if I ever did something like this, I'd leave it to the last day, which is probably not the best idea to do. So how long would you say to sort of give it?
So when I was applying, there was a few apprenticeships who were on offer. So I just done some research about obviously recruitment and what would be involved and other teams as well. Because like I said, I didn't have no experience working in the office. This was like my first job. So the application process was actually perfectly fine. There was pre-screening questions and multiple choice questions as well. And they were like scenario questions, which made it a lot more easier. When it came to getting an invite for the assessment day, obviously you're going to be very nervous. It was my first ever assessment day I'd done. We was given a task called the Lost Task, and I had to make sure I prepared for it before the assessment day, and I took notes, and notes really helped me to get through that as well. I also had a presentation I had to prepare for my individual interview, and that included like my biggest learning experience. But yeah, overall it was, I just made sure I'd done research, so I was really prepared when going in to like obviously the application and the assessment day.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Dace. And Lee, I can ask you a question about CVs. Would you say that less is more with a CV, so keep it really simple, or would you, as a recruiter who views lots of CVs, like to see it a bit more colourful, jazzy, some boxes? And what about a picture?
What a question!
What a question!
Yeah. So, as beautiful as I'm sure everybody is, I tend to not like too much personal, so image, or I mean, it's quite an out-of-date thing to do now, but sort of date of birth, things like that, I wouldn't put on there. Personally, I just don't think there's a need, that an image shouldn't change your application in any way or shape or form. I appreciate some people like to put things on there if they're in if they're in a sort of like a design role. They might want fancy graphics on there, which is absolutely great. Personally, I review lots and lots and lots and lots of CVs, as I'm sure you have, Jace, and I find that I just want really clear, concise, to the point information. People tend to bulk CVs out, thinking it looks better if you've got 25 bullet points against your job. Actually, we just want to see the real important parts. And that's where it comes back to what Deb was saying. If you are reading the job description and you're quite selective of where you're applying, and you really, really are interested in that role, I would actually go in and tailor your CV slightly to the role. So if you've got a generic CV that's got maybe more information on it, but when you go to apply for a specific role, just go in and take out the bits that you don't think are relevant, keep it short, keep it concise. As we've mentioned, we review hundreds of applications. I have one role that's got 65 applications overnight. So CVs that are 5, 6, 7 pages long they're just not going to get the time and attention that you've put into writing it. So just keep it as short and concise as possible. Would you say that, Deb?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, for some roles, like some of the roles that Jason outlined earlier, you know, we can see 200, 300 applications. Yeah. So it really is about brevity. And with the graphics, I think it's not about having something fancy, but sometimes when you do a CV on a Word using Microsoft Office, you can't make full use of the space. So to get something down to one page, it's sometimes you can just use other packages to make it stand out with sort of colors and different fonts and stuff. And those CVs are really at a glance, and they make it easy for us to see, you know, to see a summary of your experience.
I think it's also worth saving your CV as a PDF, downloading it and looking at it back, because different systems, as somebody questioned earlier, does the ATS mess with the formatting? If you keep it in a Word document, some ATSs will change the format, some font becomes overlaid. So I would always download it as a PDF and upload a PDF, because then it's going to look how you intend it to look and things won't jump around.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, really good advice.
Yeah. And with CVs, I mean, and applications, actually, the amount that I've seen over the years where there's a lot of spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, especially for those roles where they're leadership roles, so they're people right at the top of the company that are applying, and lo and behold, there's still a fair amount of grammatical errors in there and spelling mistakes. So I would say if you looked at it, your application or your CV, and you think it's fine, that's great, but try and get a separate pair of eyes on it as well, because you put a lot of work and effort into making an application in your CV, and you don't want it to be undone by obviously something that can be looked at maybe by a fresh pair of eyes. So it's just to reiterate that message. There's a question that's come in here. Will there be links sent to all the opportunities you mentioned today, i.e. the journalism opportunities? Yes, we can share that. Absolutely, we can. The journalism opportunities I mentioned was the news traineeship, which is closed now for this year, but there's a link that I can send you with a bit more information about that when it goes live, which has got some really nice content. There's visual content on there as well. We can also share, when our apprenticeships go live, the links to that as well on the 17th of April. But again, please do keep an eye on our careers website, itvjobs.com, and our social media platforms at ITV Careers. Just doing a last scan then for questions, as we've got a few minutes left. There's a couple here about how you become a runner, or starting off as a runner. Into my mind, in my experience, I don't think there's necessarily an official route to do that. I think a lot of it is around just being sometimes in the right place at the right time, knocking on the door with people that you might know or contacts within the industry, or making those speculative contacts, and looking at similar roles that might become available that give you kind of a route into running as well. But as I said earlier, it's very competitive. There's a lot of people vying for the same position. Deb and Lee mentioned roles outside of production that sometimes get in about 60, 100 applicants. So you can imagine the scale of how competitive people wanting to be runners is. But it is a fantastic industry to get into in terms of production. And it's extremely hard work, but it's rewarding. So I think just be persistent with making some contacts, going to industry-related events, seeing who you can make contacts with, whether it's looking at different profiles on LinkedIn, which we've mentioned briefly, and you've had a session before, I believe. So try and identify relevant people on LinkedIn who work in the industry and send them a speculative message. I think that's a good starting point. So we've got a few minutes left. I'm just doing a quick final scan. There's a couple fresh questions in here, so we'll get through these. But if you have any on reflection after that come through, we'll monitor this today, and we'll come back to you with anything that we we can answer. First question I've got is, what hard skills would one need? Oh, it's disappeared.
Click on research.
It's that bottom one.
I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. What hard skills would one need for the production sector? When you mean hard skills, do you mean like technical skills rather than what we call soft skills, which is kind of personality traits and behaviours? You mean more of this actual skill set for within the production sector? Again, it all depends what role and what level you go in at. Because if you're going in as a runner, I think they just need people with a real sort of can-do, proactive attitude, who's a great relationship builder that can get on with people. So there's not necessarily a technical skill set that's needed. I think you pick the technical skills up along with that. So I think in the production industry, if you see any opportunity that you look at, have a really good review of what the opportunity is all about and the skills that you might need to develop to get there. So maybe just go on our website now or after this and see what roles we have that might not be right for you now, but in the future, what you need to aspire to get there. And that'll give you a bit of a flavour of what we're looking at generally in terms of production related roles. And it'll give you a bit of a steer of where you need to go to get there. I think that might be it with questions, unless I'm missing anything. As we're coming up to time, just want to say a final thank you from me and all of our colleagues here at ITV. Hope you really enjoyed the session with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you all, and we just want to wish you all the best for your future endeavours, and we look forward to an application at ITV in the near future.